Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Sweet Spot, a celebration, my favorite type of episodes we have on The Sweet Spot. Very excited to share a milestone, an achievement, a celebration, like I said, a 10-year anniversary of our award-winning, industry-leading Respond and Resolve review response solution here with the product director of Respond and Resolve, Jackie Avery. Jackie, welcome back to The Sweet Spot.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to talk about this too.
Congratulations. What a feat. 10 years of responding to reviews. We are going to have the opportunity to speak with Jason Lee, our Chief Technology Officer, and we're going to talk to him about really the history and evolution of this solution and really guest feedback management in general, how that's evolved over time. But with you, I thought we'd start with talking about present today. And this solution, Respond and Resolve, again, responding to hotel guest reviews. What makes this so special? What is the secret sauce? Why has it seen such an explosion of growth from our hotel partners? And what do people love about it?
Yeah. So I'd say everyone on my team probably has a different answer to this, but for me, it really comes down to passion, time, and flexibility. So we're really passionate about that connection, making, that moment with the guest truly matter, taking the time to really connect in that way with them. And I'd say, I guess, right, others might say, well, these other people within the industry or, at the hotel also have that passion and care about that connection. So, I think we all agree that that's really important. But then you come to also adding in time. Mm-hmm. So someone might be able to dedicate an hour to responding to their guest reviews or maybe even a few hours a week and they feel really good about that.
Yeah.
But like for us, right, this is day in, day out. This is what we do all day long. We really have the time to not only have the passion for that connection with the guest, but take the time to think about what they wrote and how they wrote it.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people who have the passion and have the time. And I absolutely do not want to diminish that.
Right.
I'm so happy that they do.
Yeah.
I'd say the third and just as equally important aspect, though, is flexibility.
Yeah.
So this is an ever-changing landscape, right? One moment, the M- in writing makes you sound human. It's casual. This is how you connect. The very next day, that's an indicator of AI. If you're using that, no one thinks you're you.
Yeah.
So in the past, right, you would start writing a response and you just want to make sure you're not sounding defensive, you're not being dismissive of, whatever their concern is. And that's still important. But that's not where you start anymore. You start by convincing someone that you're a person. You're sitting at a computer, taking away from all of these other aspects of your job. And you're like, my first step is showing everyone that I'm me and I'm real.
Yeah.
So on top of all of that, right, now you've got that going on. Maybe, you feel like you've got a handle on it. There is a very intense, again, ever-changing landscape when you're thinking about the political climate, the economic climate, and those impacts the guests and travel. We all know that. And so it's really hard to meet a guest where they're at if you're not keeping up to date with everything going on. You have to be aware of those shifts that are happening all the time to everyone.
Yeah, it's ever changing, especially over the course of a decade, which has, obviously been the timeline of this solution here. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that authenticity is so key to show the guests that you actually care about what you wrote. And you're right, there's a challenge now to almost convince that guest that I am real, I am listening to you, and I'm connecting. And there's a reason why in this age of technological advancement and AI, we were talking about it every single day. We're at the peak of technological advancement every single day we move forward. There are still hoteliers that come to us and say, we want to maintain a human-to-human connection. We don't want AI to be responding or generating responses that are going straight to our guests. Why do you feel like that is, and what are the feedback you're hearing for these hotel partners?
Yeah. So when you zoom out, right, guests are the entire reason that hotels exist. So when you're considering reviews and checking reviews before you stay somewhere or leaving a review after you've departed, these are really important aspects of the guest journey. They're a part of your guest experience. So when you're a property who is fully invested in your guests having a great experience at your hotel, you want them to, be surprised when they come in the best ways. You want them to leave with the best memories and spread that by word of mouth and online. You understand that you have to continue that real connection the same way you want to at the front desk in those points online. You have to connect with them, human to human in that review response.
Yeah. Jackie, one of the things that I think makes the solution so special and something you've done a great job of is curating this team of professional writers, where a lot of these writers here went to school for writing and communication. These are degrees that are their specialty. They have a passion for this, right? And you talk to a general manager nowadays, maybe they don't have a passion in writing, right? Like that wasn't why they got into hospitality, to say, I want to be a writer. But you created this team that also understands the nuances of the hotel world. It's the only vertical that we work with in hospitality. And there's so many of those little nuances that you have to teach, and you have to incorporate in your messaging and in your review response writing to make sure that is articulated so clearly to your guests, or really it undermines your reputation as a whole. Talk to us a little bit about, some of those nuances, maybe some examples, and how you've been able to generate just this team of, again, just incredible writers.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate because we're doing this episode to celebrate 10 years. So we know what we're looking for, and we have experience in how to train, specifically writing for, hospitality and guest reviews. So fortunately, you have these degrees where people come in, they're educated, they know how to write well. And then you have this training based on real world experience and having seen the evolution of guest reviews, right? You used to get it where guests only left reviews when they're angry. That's not the case anymore. Guests they love the praise of, feeling rewarded for leaving a good review. They want to leave a good review.
Yeah.
And having written so many, each individual learns something and takes it back to the team. So it's consistent workshops, it's creative workshops, it's adjusting to the new landscape, being aware of what is seen as AI and what is AI, being able to identify a review where a guest used AI to leave it maybe, right? Or also being able to take a moment and pause and know the best way to reach another human when they're being skeptical. Yeah. So whereas someone on property, they're so focused maybe on, well, I want to let this guest know that that's not how we do things, or that's not really what happened here. And this professional writer on the team realizes the first line of this review was, and I bet a bot is going to answer this. You have to cross that bridge first. You have to tackle that first. And if you don't know how, it's going to be really hard to get your actual message across to this person that you really want to. So we're always building on what we know, because we realize what we know today can't be what we rely on forever. Everything is going to be different in 3 months. Yeah. Everything will be different in 1 year. And when you're set up to be able to make those adjustments and you're excited about that, when you love writing, when you love being able to write in a different way and connect with someone, and this is your passion, you thrive in that landscape. It's not a challenge that you don't want to take on. You look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right about the landscape completely changing sometimes, even though over the course of 10 years. I mean, booking has their pros and cons. They actually essentially solicit, some of the negative feedback so that you can address that. Character count, with TripAdvisor, and maybe now going into, reviews with no content at all and responding to those. PPI and personal information, using people's names in those responses. Is that something that a site allows or not? All of these are things that you wouldn't really think through in responding to reviews, but it's so critical and so important because, again, it's an underlying foundation of your reputation management. And, why do we respond to reviews? To show we care. So if that care isn't being shown, it really, really undermines your reputation. So anything that lasts for 10 years, obviously, means that it's a success. I'm sure you've heard over the years some really, really rewarding pieces of feedback from our hotel partners. Can you share? We love a good story here on the Sweet Spot in the podcast. Can you share any examples, maybe just one or two, of some special moments or conversations with some of our Respond and Resolve clients?
Yeah, thinking back, because it feels really relevant this year, because it does seem to be happening more frequently. I think back to an email I got from a client, and they were going through it. Their property started receiving hundreds of reviews within an hour because of something happening within the city. It was something going on, right, that was happening citywide and really had nothing to do with their hotel. And you can imagine in that moment, right, they're fielding calls at the front desk from guests who haven't arrived yet. They're trying to ease concerns from guests in-house. And their online listings are just being flooded from people who aren't there and are just saying stuff.
Yeah.
And really, it's just because of the city they're in and something that the property has nothing to do with. So in those moments, I'm so grateful that we can help. Mm-hmm. I got this email from this hotel, and they were just like, thank you. I had so much on my shoulders, and I know I have this support and this, and I put out these things, to these other people at the property who help us. But in that moment, I knew you guys were there.
Yeah.
And I knew that you could give advice on what to do. You've seen it before. You helped guide my steps. And I'm so grateful for that our years of experience mean that in the moment, a guest can be served face to face, and we can be assisting, with things happening outside of this property's control.
Yeah. And what a line to tiptoe to if AI is involved, right?
Yes.
In that, and the messaging is not communicated the right way there, it could mean so much more than just a 1-star review. It could mean detrimental damage to your reputation, especially in those moments of crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some sites let you edit what you post back and some don't.
Yeah.
So the stakes are high.
Right. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's happening fast.
Yeah, very fast. And so as we wrap up, our conversation here, and again, congratulations. As product director, you look at this, you look at this 10-year milestone. What does it mean to you, and what's your vision for the future of the solution?
Yeah, this milestone, I feel it. I feel it personally, not just for me, not only me, but my entire team. When you genuinely care about connecting with other people and helping and being support in this way, it's really easy to feel the joy in what you're doing. So this milestone to me is just something that I am reflecting on, that I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be able to work with clients across the country and help people out there connect in a space where they're expecting not to have that opportunity. More often than not, people are expecting not to hear back, or, they don't want to get their hopes up that they will hear back, but they do.
Yeah.
And it feels great, and I love that.
Yeah, the stakes can't be any higher right now when it comes to that. And hotels are getting creative with trying to figure out ways to connect with guests in a world where, you don't have to visit the front desk anymore. You don't have to interact with hotel staff anymore. So hotels are trying to figure out ways that they can keep a constant line of communication. And this is always going to be a place where guests are going to be, do not make it a one-way conversation. They're going to continue to leave feedback. Are you genuinely listening? Are you authentically responding? And we're so grateful to have you on this podcast to celebrate this milestone. Thank you, Jackie, and congratulations again to you and your team.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here.
Next, we're going to be talking with Jason Lee, Chief Technology Officer at Travel Media Group, where we'll talk a little bit about the history and evolution of this Respond and Resolve solution, which just turned 10 years old. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of our 10-year celebration of TMG's Respond Resolve Review Response solution. I am here with one of the architects, CTO Jason Lee. Congratulations to you and your team. 10 years.
Yes.
Jason, we love a good origin story. Talk to us. Bring us back 10 years ago when you started. Maybe it was even before 10 years.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about how Respond and Resolve came to be and kind of the evolution of the solution that now turns 10 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I think we, at that time, we had been kind of doing reputation for hotels for a little bit, mostly in post-stay engagement, and then also monitoring reputation scores and reputation flow. And we were getting questions like, hey, can you handle review response? And so we sat down and we were like, yeah, we're getting this more and more. And we had salespeople that were saying the same thing, like, hey, I just got on the phone with this guy and he said he would buy if we had this product.
Yeah.
And so we sat down and we started thinking about, like, what is it going to take to get this done? And we happened to have a tech summit during that same time, and we all sat down. So at that time, it was all the tech leaders we had and our tech team as well. And we really just kind of mapped out, like, what would it take to do this?
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, listen, the only way this is going to work, anybody will even buy this, is if they can ensure that whoever is providing them the response is going to do it in their voice, is going to be able to do it in a way that they would do it.
Yeah.
Speak to their guests in the way that they would want to be spoken to. And so we sat down and we put together what was kind of the building blocks of what is today's Respond and Resolve at Travel Media Group, but at the time was even more complicated. It had multiple touch points. So it had a touch point of the review coming in. It had a touch point after the response where we would audit the response before the response went to the hotel. The hotel would then approve the response. And then once the hotel approved the response or edited the response, it would come back to us and we would touch it one more time before we would then publish that response. So we had this, we had a 3-touch internal, 4-touch, if you include the hotelier system.
Right.
And, of course, anybody who's done any kind of product work or anything would think like that's an insane amount of touches. That's a crazy amount of scaling.
Yeah.
And so then our secondary thing was like, how do we do this based on the number of reviews or whatever? And we weren't even thinking that way. We're like, because there's an unknown number of reviews, how do we even do this? So we started the product out with that kind of cadence, with 20 reviews being kind of the core. So you get 20 reviews a month, and it was TripAdvisor only.
Yeah.
And you had this one critical response. So we would if there was something that happened that was really bad, we would write this very specific kind of PR version of a response.
Sure.
And that was the original product. So we put it all together. We put our price point out, and I believe you were the first person to sell one to a hotel. So as we got that going, then it was, then we went through the rest of kind of like the evolution of the product.
Right.
But at that time, it was something I think one other company was doing, but we didn't really know what they were doing or how they were doing it.
Yeah.
So we kind of took our own path in how we created it.
And we were talking off camera about, some of the challenges, and maybe I think it's through some of the unexpected, as you think about, all right, if tomorrow, someone was like, let's create a company that responds to reviews. And then all of a sudden you start building that and you come across these challenges, these issues, these problems that you're like, well, I didn't think about that. I just kind of thought about the output and input, right? What were some of those kind of learning lessons along the way, and how did you kind of adapt to that, whether using efficiencies, technology, because it's a lot more difficult than just saying, hey, we're just going to respond to your reviews.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge and where we had our biggest evolution in the solution was in when we converted what we were doing. So at the time when we started it, we were using third-party data, and we were pulling some stuff, but some stuff was being pulled through a third-party vendor. And it wasn't until we launched OneView, where we controlled the entirety of the data set.
Yeah.
And not just the entirety of the data set, but the frequency of the data set, which was insanely important.
Yes.
So this has to do with when it is received from the time that it was published live.
Right.
And so that in itself sort of opened up this new lane. But in doing so, it also opened up our eyes to this really one incredible flaw to our system, which was how we were pricing it. But that has to do with how we sort of viewed the universe of reviews for a single property.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started, we had that 20, right? The next little jump was, well, maybe we'll start charging by the room. And this was something we had heard other vendors doing. And we're like, oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll start charging by the room.
Sure.
What we found immediately was that we were massively overcharging some hotels and way undercharging other hotels. So a destination 80-room hotel could be doing 3 or 4 times the review volume that a 250-room corporate hotel was doing.
Right.
Like, that's straight up like extortion on one side, and then just
And you have extended stay sometimes, you don't have the frequency.
Completely. Yeah. So I think getting that pricing down. So once we then controlled the universe of reviews, we then, so at the time we launched OneView, we had a 360 view of a 365 to be exact, a day view of a property's reputation.
Right.
So we could sort of forecast their total quantity of reviews over a year, and then sort of amortize that out to create pricing around review flow. And so I believe we were one of the first to do review flow, and I think we might still be one of the only companies that prices that way, where we actually look at the quantity of reviews and surveys that a property gets, and then we price, knowing exactly what we're up against, including the 35% ish increase over the summer months that happens just based on review flow, guest flow. So I think those were those big things, kind of those big hurdles, internally, pricing it the right way, doing it in a way where we could ensure that whatever we said we were going to do, we could 100% do.
Right.
We had the staff to do it, we had the technology to do it, we had all the pieces in play. And then I think from there, it was then understanding the sort of undulation of the acquisition of review data.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a crazy space because, if you're scraping the data directly from a site, then you've got that whole thing that's going on where sites are continually sort of trying to thwart that. You have the API side of that where you can get API, but that requires you to get these relationships with these various sites.
Right.
And so we were just dogged determination to secure better and better and better and better data sets.
Yeah.
And we did that through eventually through getting partnerships with the major review providers like Expedia, Booking.com, and Google.
Yeah.
And so inside of doing that, we were able to really secure a data set that then allowed us to respond in a timely manner, an efficient manner, and in a way that, could completely solve this issue for a hotel.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest learnings you or we've had is through those challenges, but also through the close relationships that we've had with our hotel partners, and those hotels that, we say it all the time when it comes to reputation. I mean, feedback, you want feedback, right?
Yes.
Whether it be from your partners who Travel Media Group are working with, whether it be from your guests, and you're a hotelier, you want that feedback because that means it's striking some kind of chord, whether it's good or bad, because then you can make adjustments. So, actually hearing what our hoteliers had to say about our reviews and what they had to say about our responses helped us collaborate or calibrate rather their voice and tone and everything to kind of get us right in harmony with how they wanted responses. And I think for me, at least, it was very surprising to see the spectrum at which people wanted, how they wanted their responses handled. Whether it's, we don't want an apology ever. to be heard on our responses. Or, we always apologize, whether it's our fault or not. We're always going to say the customer is always right. And there's everything in between. We want our voice a little bit more laid back. We want it more of a professional tone. You've gone through these patterns and trends of try to use keywords in every single one of your review responses. What aside from the challenges, what have you learned maybe talking to hotel partners or hearing them, seeing some of that feedback that comes in about our responses? Because I know, although you're the CTO, you're very close to that feedback and are in there and seeing what our hotel partners are saying every day about our responses.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. And I think it hits at the evolution of the benefits of this need. And I think that's what's so interesting about doing this for this length of time. So in the very beginning, I talked about that very complicated setup that we had where we were like approving the response before we sent it to the hotelier, and then we had the hotelier approve the response and edit the response, and then we publish the response. We kept a bunch of that together. So we kept the right approved by the hotelier, edit and resolve, or audit and resolve process on our side. And so in doing that, even though it was overkill, in the beginning, we had people saying, well, we don't want to approve it. We don't want to approve it because we're like, this takes too much time, and because I'm not around the weekend or whatever.
Yes.
But what ended up happening is that as the sort of understanding of what review response was doing, so the review response kind of need sometimes hinges on what is the downward pressure to get this done. So is this coming from my management company? Is it coming from the brand? Is it coming from an OTA that says I'll get better placement if I do this way? So this becomes like, or like you said, I heard that I get better SEO, I get better placement if I use keywords in my responses. So this becomes a sort of meta benefit. And I think through the through line that we took from the very beginning and way before I feel like hoteliers wanted us to do it that way. And maybe today there's still a few hoteliers that are just like, whatever, man, just get it done.
Yeah.
Is that we really wanted to communicate with the guest who wrote the review, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we were writing in our response, that communication was clear. It was clear in gratitude on 5 stars. It was clear in empathy and resolution in 1-star reviews. And it was really trying to find that balance when there was no feedback, even if the hotel didn't care maybe as much about the content of the response, or they trusted us to make that response. But what we find is, like now 10 years later, that where we have had a complete shift in our property profile at Travel Media Group, where I think we started with a lot of economy properties and select service properties, where we've reached into these incredibly large resorts, luxury properties. Some of the nicest properties in the United States are our clients, and I think it's because we've stuck with that. So you talk to the hotelier that has a $200 or $300 a night guest, or even a $1,200 a night guest in some cases, their feeling about the retention of that guest is very different than a select service. But they're also their version of like that. This activity promotes acquisition of guests.
Yeah.
And so the stakes are high in this space. And I think we're reaching into like a whole new era where this information, the review and the response, are affecting generative search. And we're reaching a whole new era of economizing the search time with massive amounts of review data.
Yeah.
In an individual research session for a guest, is really changing the importance of this activity together. So I think, I know I kind of took a windy road on that, but I think the biggest thing is that the evolution of expectation from the guest, but also then from the hotel, has changed. And we've stayed close to it this entire time. And like everything that we do at Travel Media Group, we are sort of singularly focused. So we're so focused on this as this. We probably, when I talk to hoteliers, sometimes they're like, man, you are really exaggerating the importance of this activity. And I'm like, no, it's everything.
Yeah.
This is about you securing the relationship with this guest. This is everything. But hopefully you want a partner like that that has that sort of dogged determination to make sure that it's done correctly. But I feel like, so to kind of wrap this up, I do feel like that is what we've done. That's been the through line, is like focusing on the need. And like you said, focusing on the voice altering account by account. So now you're talking about, a few thousand hotels that we're scaling, where we're like in the off months, we're doing somewhere, around 25,000 reviews. And we're able to then, inside of that, still create personalization, still create voice of a hotel, still be able to hit the right kind of policies, the right kind of renovation details, the right kind of care to each individual review or each individual guest as we see that, to make this thing work.
Yeah, I mean, every hotel we have found out is so drastically different from the way they want things handled, but also, just their properties are different, right? Their locations, their markets, occupancy drivers, the type of traveler that they bring in, that they want to attract. There's so many different elements that speak to that. And it's with Jackie and her team do a fantastic job of to the point, to the precision. We want to be completely aligned with that hotel partner. And what you were talking about was some of the, the newer luxury properties that we're now partnering with. I mean, the stakes are high in the sense of they've had decades-long reputation.
Yeah.
They have built that, and it is no longer a negotiable for them to make sure that reputation is protected.
Right.
And a solution like this, like Respond and Resolve, really can help solidify that, and also just serve as such a foundation and a security blanket in case some of these, Jackie had a couple examples of these things right now that can go wrong at a property. We hate to see it, but it happens every single day. And a trusted partner like Travel Media Group and Respond Resolve team behind you can really help give you a little bit of peace of mind for a hotelier. And you're absolutely right. Obsessed is a great word to put it, and passionate about review response. I mean, this is something that we've done for 10 years, but I think it's been a little bit longer that we've been in the reputation game.
Yeah.
And, you can't, in 2026, I had a podcast episode late last year where, it was actually with the co-founders of ILHA, and they were talking about how you cannot, in 2026, cannot be a complete expert at every aspect of hospitality. You just can't. It's one of those unique industries where you can't know everything about everything, right? You will never be the expert of chemicals for your hotel pool.
Right.
But it's important to know those things, and it's important and critical to have a valuable partner that knows those things.
Yes.
So you think about that as one element: chemicals in a pool, curtains, flooring. Review response is a very important element to your digital and online reputation there. And we talked with Jackie about, obviously AI and how that has certainly changed in the last 10 years, and it's how it's come in. Talk to us, because I think a lot of times people might hear us and think that we are anti-AI or anti-technology, and it's actually the exact opposite. It's an incredible piece of technology that we can use in elements of reputation, but not necessarily for the actual response. So how are you kind of using AI? And we do have an AI solution, not 10 years old yet.
No.
Right? We'll be doing that in several years. But talk to us about how you've used technology and AI kind of hand in hand with Respond and Resolve for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I would say in the last 18 months, we have evolved our core platform probably more than we did maybe in, 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. So we've done a lot recently, and a lot of it is that a whole new world of data analytics has been opened up by this. So something that I would have needed maybe 2 or 3 data scientists to help me with, I can do with an API through Anthropic or through OpenAI. And, working with members of my team and putting some data together, we're able to find like really interesting insights. And so the first thing we launched last year was the guest experience snapshot. And that was a completely AI-driven report. And the sort of origin of that was to show the hotel the top things that a guest was experiencing great, and then the top things that was going wrong. And some of that was to show them multiples of the things that we were responding to. So using this data to kind of to shine a little light on like, hey, we can only say sorry for this so many times,
right?
But also to show them, the other side of it, where it's like, hey, this is where you guys are winning. You guys are winning in these areas, and this feedback isn't always negative. There's a bunch of great stuff in here. And I think so. We've then continued that by continuing to analyze trends, to continue to analyze review flow, to analyze sentiment data, and it just continues and continues and continues as we sort of unlock the use cases of these tools. But for us, I think like the big pieces of the tools that are really exciting coming forward are the ways that we can scale personalization in a way that we couldn't do without major data science. And so we're able to scale personalization. So taking the personalization that a hotelier gives us about very specific things about their property, and not writing the response based on that, but sort of confirming the response against the voice. So I can take a response and confirm then the voice, and it says, yeah, this matches what they asked us to do.
Sure.
And so that can get in our world, that's probably one of the more complicated pieces of it, especially where you have, a very lengthy voice note. You have a massive policy note, you have a massive amenity note. So these are these spaces where a writer could get turned around on something, but where this could verify, hey, the response you just wrote is missing this one piece,
right?
Or
notes are changing seasonally,
absolutely,
based on restaurant menus, based on programming that the resort is conducting out and its amenities, classes that it has, timing. I mean, all of those elements are notes that can be provided and are so important. I mean, we think of it as oh, well, if we get a date wrong, or if we get an item wrong, I mean, that has such a big impact on the guest experience and their impression of your hotel and the care that you're taking. So it's just one of those elements, again, we talked about it with Jackie, of, you have to prove essentially at this time that you're not AI and that you do care, and that, it's so important to these guests and hoteliers, all this. So.
Yeah. And I think that's where it all boils down to, is that when I get that email from booking.com as a guest, that's from the hotel, and I open that up and I read the response to the review that I wrote, does it feel authentic? Does it feel like it came from them? Does it mean anything to me?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of meaning to that at all? Or is this does this intensify my advocacy of this property, or does this intensify my anger?
Right.
And, or does this turn me around? Does this make me want to, and I think these are these opportunities you have in this space that does make a huge difference. And I think AI will help us enhance the personalization of our individual properties, and help us like put that really like that perfect response together that helps a guest know that they're cared for.
Yeah, it's a feeling. I mean, Jackie talked about it, getting that feedback from our partners about, this was a repeat guest. This is someone that stayed with us, and they talked about our response back to them. They thanked us, and those are the moments that we strive here at Travel Media Group for, and we've seen so many over the last decade of doing this review response, and here we are at 10 years. As you look towards the future, the landscape ever changing, what do you see kind of for the future of Respond and Resolve? And maybe we can open it up just to guest feedback management. I mean, we're at the really inflection point, I feel like, right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of more of the same in terms of what this has been about all along, which is the guest experience and,
Sure.
and how do we react to the guest experience, react to the specific experience that the guest is giving us in a response, but act to then multiple guests having similar experiences. How do we react to that? How do we improve the guest experience over time?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the opportunity is right now, is that there are so many tools available to us to understand this at a much more granular level, at a much more specific level. So the old way of asking questions, I think, of guests, I think is going to go away at some point. Us sort of like asking guests the same questions over and over again.
Right.
Would you recommend? How clean was your room? What was the breakfast like?
Yeah.
Rate this, rate that. I think we're going to get to a spot where we sort of understand these elements, but we can take broader textual data points and start to really dial in to, so what does a 3 in breakfast mean?
Yeah.
Right. What does it mean when somebody says that they would recommend at a 7?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Or a thumbs up.
Or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I think this is where these kinds of scales get a little funky.
Mm-hmm.
And so AI could help a guest actually articulate themselves in a response in a survey, for example.
Yeah.
AI could also obviously take this data and take patterns of data and help a hotel understand the fail points of their service. And I think those are these really amazing opportunities for hotels that want to engage there.
Yeah.
But all of this together is also doing something really interesting in the generative search world. So we're seeing people flock to generative search more and more and more because it economizes that effort.
Yeah.
Right. I can read hundreds of reviews. I can have hundreds of reviews read for me and summarized based on a very specific question.
Mm-hmm.
So I can ask about the breakfast, for example, and I get this summary. So none of that is going to come through a 3 on a guest experience survey, a guest satisfaction survey is not going to affect that. But the 25 Expedia reviews that you've gotten in the last 90 days will.
Yes.
And I think those are those things that start to inform the traveler are going to be the quantity of signals, whether they're positive or negative, and then the sort of inference of that signal. It's not binary. It's not good or bad. It is this other thing, which is sort of the feeling of a guest. And I think AI is getting better and better and better and is getting to a point where it can sort of relay the feeling that multiples of guests have had about your property to a prospective guest. Yeah. And that either should thrill you or it should scare you.
Yes.
Because this is this part of technology that I think we're all enjoying in some ways, right? Because it's saving us time, it's saving us effort. But in other ways, there is no place to hide.
Right.
So you can't hide behind, the first 200 reviews that you received at your hotel anymore.
Right.
Where you got the first 200 reviews, you netted out a 4.4, and you've sort of been riding on that for the last 5-6 years. More and more, that score is going to be irrelevant.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the historical data is just going to become less and less vital and critical. Yeah. And it's going to be a moving it's what you want. It's absolutely something in the now. What is the guest doesn't care about what your hotel was like 5 years ago when somebody at the front desk had a great, was really personable and friendly to them. They want to know what that front desk agent is doing today, what that room looks like today. Right. So it's going to be this living, almost a living reputation. And
it is today. Yeah. It is now, but it's different because a guest won't research that deeply. Right. Right. It is today. I think it's living today. And I think the hotels that are winning today will continue to win. Yeah. Because it means that you're doing the right thing by your guest. And I think that continues. This cycle of sort of looking at the guest experience and finding your fail points and fixing them, finding them, fixing is the real key. But it's also empowering your front desk. It's making sure that nobody leaves your property upset. It's all of the things that we should be doing anyway.
Right.
That affect it. This is true hospitality, at its core. But I think, what's interesting about what AI is doing is it's kind of shining a light into, the I guess, residual needs here. But I think this also gives you an unprecedented opportunity at your hotel to share this information with your staff, to take this back and really like dig in and make it work. The other thing I was going to say on what I think on the future of guest feedback management will be is that the number of companies coming in an AI play today is crazy. There's a lot of new companies that are coming in there, and then there's like long-term companies like Medallia and Qualtrics and other companies that are offering AI responses inside of their platforms. And I think this all economizes that activity, but it does not remove our obligation to have authentic voice at our property and to communicate with guests that need to be communicated with.
Right.
And the guest that needs to be communicated with, if you communicate well there, and I've said this over and over and over, if you communicate with the guest who wrote the review well, that will impact guest acquisition.
100%.
Absolutely. So the authentic voice is going to be at a premium.
Yeah.
The canned voice, the canned templated voice of AI, I think will end up being able to spot it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think in some ways nothing changes, right? In other ways, everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you on that, Jason. I think it is going to be a priority for hotels that truly care to rise above the sea of sameness and a zero response. And the templates, that was kind of that first tide, was that the templates, you wanted to show your guests that you actually cared. Write something that looked better than a template, better than a thank you for your feedback, because that's what all you were getting. Now the reputation response ecosystem is even more ingrained, because more and more people are coming in and using AI to respond. It's going to be a premium to show that you're going to be looking for those edges and places that you can show guests that you care differently from the hotel next to you.
Absolutely.
And authentic review response, caring review response is going to be one of those edges.
Yeah.
So,
but authenticity all the way around. I mean, I saw this. I saw a video of the CEO of Marriott talking about specifically saying, use this technology to give yourself more time with the guest.
Yeah.
Give yourself a few extra minutes with the guest to create relationship, to create authenticity in person.
Yeah. So general manager of the future might look closer to the general manager of the past than it does right now.
100%.
So interesting times.
Yes.
Here to celebrate again 10 years of Respond and Resolve. Congratulations. Another milestone, another chapter. Congrats to you and your team, and thanks for celebrating with us here on the Sweet Spot.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right.